listen to that spiritual, actual, factual answers to questions he asking. You find them inside you, recite you, reciting the records of cash. We laughing, we drafting the passion through various time for that comedy, dramedy, all of the fanciest, catchiest acronyms. Listeners, listen, we traveling, conscious is always unraveling. The reading you're having is mapping you back to your natural habitat. Abracadabra, it's magicless, basking to top it off the host, all the classiest. Now, what were you asking for? All of the answers, what? All the answers.
Shall we begin chatting?
I think we shall. Welcome.
Oh my god. I am in North Adams, Massachusetts, which is neither California, where you are, nor Memphis, where my clothing items are.
Nor New York City, where your
Nor New York City, where
part of your soul is, part of your heart is.
Quite recently, yeah. As of moments ago, I was there. You know, that Alicia Keys song, side note, is probably the best. I think it encapsulates the whole New York thing.
Do you mean Concrete Jungle where dreams are? Is that Alicia Keys?
Yeah. Nothing you can do. Now you're in New York.
No. Yep.
Yeah.
Empire State of Mind with Jay-Z, isn't it?
These streets, will make you feel brand new. These lights will inspire you. I can't get enough of it. I keep playing it over and over and over and over and over and over again.
When we sent Rami off to New York, me and my housemates made a little treat for them, which was I put together, like I edited together a couple of different karaoke tracks, basically with Start Spreading the News, you know, New York, New York, and that song. And like I started by singing the New York thing, kind of cheesy, Frank Sinatra style. And this was at a huge, our house was never this full. It was insane number of people in our house.
No.
And we gathered them all into the living room for this moment. So like our house was going to just collapse under the weight of humanity. And I started singing that. And then Keisha came in with the rap from that song.
No.
Well, that she'd rewritten somewhat for Rami.
No.
And then of course when the fucking chorus dropped, the entire house just started going shaboof, 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 with humanity just bouncing and singing that song at the top of the lungs, like we were at the fucking Alicia Keys concert.
No.
I mean, just the thought of that moment was, Rami just fell down because they couldn't literally take the intensity of how powerful that was. So that song has really like resonance for me because that moment was so, like the whole community was like, we are launching you to New York.
Oh my God.
We will catapult you with the sheer force of our human love.
What a way to feel nourished and supported. They must have felt amazing.
Yeah, I think it was pretty powerful. It was pretty awesome.
God. Speaking of them.
Yes?
I've been speaking with them a whole lot because I stayed in their apartment, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
Oh God. That Rami.
Pretty awesome.
We need to rename this podcast Rami.com.
That Rami.
That Rami.
That darn Rami.
And then we have a studio audience. Yay!
Yay!
In other news, I drove to my college today, Amherst College.
Okay.
I have not been to in 20 years. To say I'm flabbergasted doesn't cover it. It was a very beautiful thing to do. Like, the town of Amherst is kind of frozen in time, but, you know, let me reframe that. It's sort of like all the old-timey stores that were there then are still there, but they've been, like, slightly modernized. But it's the same, like, Judy's restaurant and the Mercantile and the, like, Indian restaurant that was there forever ago is still there.
Is that what Gast Yer Flabber? Just the fact that it's still the same?
77 things gasted my flabber. I'm about to tell you all of them. One, it was that. Two, that was like, there were now e-bikes everywhere, and I got an e-bike and could like ride around. And then I went to like my freshman dorm and my sophomore dorm and my college, and then remembering just like all the things that happened and all the places they happened. And I think what it is for me to bring it to our podcast sort of topics here, it's like, I could not feel more different inside than I felt then at that time.
Right.
And so to revisit the landscape and the locations where I was a fully different individual in my internal experience of myself was incredibly fascinating. And it also showed me the ways that, and the pieces of self that are constant. It was like, oh, I'm still this, and this, but boy, thank God that, and that is gone. And it was very interesting for me because this notion of like the self being, there are pieces of it that are transmutable and changeable and not what we identify, not actually something to identify with. But then there are pieces of it that are like, yeah, that's how Katie Rubin is. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I go back to like the Enneagram, which is like you never actually change your type. You just move through aspects of that type, but the core
qualities,
they just manifest differently. So your experience of yourself is sort of through the different manifestations of those same core qualities, maybe. That's a very vague way of putting it. But
no,
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And also I think about back to human design again. I think about when you have defined channels the way I do, I have a lot of defined channels. Sorry, not channels, centers. I have a bunch of defined centers. That means that the way they say it in human design parlance is when you have an open center, you don't have a fixed way of responding in that part of your body. So I happen to have an open head and ajna. Those are just human design terms for like centers of energy in your head. And so I am therefore never supposed to listen to anything that goes through my head. Anything going through my head is just the thoughts of other people that I'm picking up on, and they're literally irrelevant to my life. Where I'm supposed to listen is down in the body, specifically in the emotional wave and the solar plexus center and not to get too particular on my particular design, but the point being, a lot of my centers in the body are defined, which means I have fixed ways of operating in those centers. But that is not true for all humans. We all have different combinations of what's open and what's defined, right? So like, Anyway, my point being, for me, it seems to be the case that like certain things are pretty damn fixed in how they function within me and in what they want and in what they're directed toward and how they move. But that's not true for everybody. So going back there and having cleared all this trauma and integrated all these parts and all the spiritual blah, 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 I'm like, oh, I see which aspects of the defined centers are in fact fixed and which aspects of the defined centers were pieces of my injury and my trauma stuff. And that is very, very cool because, you know, what frame of reference, I mean, it's so cool for me to have a frame of reference that I literally haven't engaged with in 20 years. Right.
It's like talking to a friend that you haven't seen since high school and then like getting their experience of you. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And I did meet up with some college friends in New York City who I got to do exactly that with, where they're telling me stuff about how they remember who I was in college. And I'm going, oh my God, that's how you saw it? That's the good news is they had much more flattering views of it than I did. They were like, yeah, but you were so this and so that. And I'm like, God, thank God that's how you perceived me, because I did not feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I fooled everybody. I was
and
so
also
traumatized.
That core of you was still in existence. Like,
I guess so.
Like, I mean, I can even say like, I've known you now for 12, 13 years. And I know there's been some significant transformation of self even in that 13 years.
Oh, yeah.
Like you might say, oh God, you knew me then? And I'm like, yeah. And I still know you. You are so much that same person that I first fell in love with, you know, doing a show together and having fun and laughing a lot. And I also see the parts of you that, but those actually, to my experience of you, feel like fragments.
Huh.
Like those trauma pieces are actually fragmentary to the core person that most of us have an interaction with.
That's so fascinating to me. I've often had the idea, I had a few people say that to me a few years back. They were like, Katie, like a friend, another New York friend who I had talked to in a long time said like, no, pretty much the same. And I was like, no, actually not. And then I realized, well, okay, the filters of communication through which the words of my expression emerge are the same. But that's from the outside in. That's like the portals through which the words transmit, but not the experience of being in the body. And then it occurred to me, wouldn't it be cool if you could really for real though switch bodies with people? Like if you could...
every day I want that. I'm
Really?
so interested in that idea. I want to experience literally. I mean, I used to joke about wanting that, like, because I wanted to know what it'd be like to have a vagina.
Right.
More like what it would feel like to have things happen down there.
Uh-huh.
Because I just know it's such a it seems in my head to be such a wildly different experience.
Right.
But we don't have to be, it can be deeper than that, I think. But it's also just the idea, and the old stoner joke of like, is blue for you like it's blue for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Like imagine if you could go into the experience, the visceral experience of like anyone you've ever had a conflict with that's unresolved and feel for them how it feels to think about you.
Right. Yes.
Or to go into the experience of someone who like worships and adores you, who you're like, meh about. Amazing. Or just someone who's like a Mets fan, but like really big into the Mets.
Yeah, what's the deal with Mets fan? No. I mean, I can understand a Tigers fan, but a Mets fan?
Yeah, I was just saying like anybody, I mean, just like, man. Or like, what about someone who, okay.
But don't you get to experience this sometimes yourself? When you're in when you're in my records, you're like, oh, that's a different feeling than it is to be in Desmond's. I don't know if that's comparable.
That's a really, really good point. I'm making an assumption that, I mean, they are radically different. I'm with Desmond's soul. I'm with yours. They're very different. God, that's a really good point. Maybe I actually do this all the time and I'm just not acknowledging it. But I am making the assumption that if I were to physically be in your body, like if my consciousness and my experiential awareness could somehow merge with your flesh and have the experience your flesh is having, I guess I'm assuming that would be different than the thing I do.
Maybe.
I might be wrong. Maybe
it probably is. I mean, I'm sure it'd be different, but I mean, there's some you have an insight that some people do not have.
Well, that's true. That's definitely
that's the basis of this podcast. But
well, yeah, kind of. But also, like, I could go inside your system and be like, oh, I feel where the toxicity or the trauma is around your pain. But that doesn't mean I know what it feels like to have a pain.
Right.
That's different.
And let me just be clear. Katie is saying peen, P-E-E-N. She's not like just been in New York for 2 weeks. And now she's saying, yeah, pain. You got a lot of pain in there.
What would pain be?
Pain.
Were you going to say words, Desmond?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, for you to really experience the body of someone else, the first thing that would go away is your intuition about other people. Because I assume, pre or post education of Akashic record reading, you still had much more of an intuitive nature towards others. So to step into my body or anyone else's body, the first thing that would have to do is because I assume you have to leave Katie behind for this to be a full experience, right?
Okay, I was assuming. I hear what you're saying. I made a different...
Which science fiction theoretical framework are we operating with, Katie?
Yeah, I assumed the following sci-fi theoretical, that I have my full awareness as Katie Rubin's consciousness. And as that consciousness, I'm experiencing the full range of the Desmond consciousness.
It's like you're putting on the Desmond VR goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can feel the pain.
That has got to be like the basis of this whole transformation. If I can't feel the pain or the pagina.
Why?
I was trying to make it like a pain. I don't know.
No.
Or the vagina. If that's not part of the experience, I'm like, why did I bother?
So Cassidy's been hanging out in San Jose for a while. That's why he's talking like this.
Pagina. The pagina.
That's how they talk down there?
Yep.
I've been to San Jose.
Oh, this is in northwestern San Jose. It's a very particular neighborhood. Pagina. It's a lot of old Latvian Jews who live there.
Have you ever been to the Pagine Cafe there in northwestern San Jose?
Get the froth. Get the froth.
Oh no, where are we? We have gone
Froth.
off the goddamn rails.
Let me ask you something. If a woman's Pagine were to froth, what would that mean? What's happening inside of her that the Pagine
I think
froth?
I'm gonna call an audible here. I'm throwing a flag on the play, and I'm saying this is me turning a page on this piece of the conversation.
Where'd you get so appropriate all of a sudden?
I don't know. I just don't want to theorize about a frothy Pagine. That's all.
Okay, I have a theory. I want to theorize just briefly about the frothy Pagine. Either, these are my theories. One, you've been living for a while south of the equator. And things are so hot in the atmosphere that the juices your Pagine produces are frothy. Number two.
Like foaming, like you foamed the milk.
Correct.
Like it's just steam. It's straight steam froth.
Steam in it. Just steam and froth in it.
Oh, like you steam your Pagine like, what's her name on The Goop Lady?
Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow. You're steaming the Pagine and you get frothy.
Or you're on a roller coaster that goes up, down, spinny, spinny, spinning. And it just shakes the froth and the internal juices so much that they froth. But it has to be in northwest San Jose, clearly because the heat, or below the equator, so that you get the heat.
Well, also San Jose. What's the country that San Jose is in? There's
Belize? Nope.
Maybe.
China. I don't know. I don't know.
It's not in China.
I have one more theory. This is
Go.
the last one, and then we'll move along. You are so aroused by the tongue that is working you, and you are the Pagine in this theoretical, that you froth, and you've never, it's like when women squirt, but
it's just a whole new experience.
Yeah.
I'm frothing. What the? Wow.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that if I got sci-fi dropped into a Pagine having body, I would froth.
Huh.
Just out of sheer like, wow.
Interesting. I wonder, I have a theory too that like women can more easily imagine what it is to have a peen than men can imagine what it is to have a Pagine. What do you think?
Maybe.
Because of the simplicity of the organism.
Exactly.
You know, it's like you strap it on, you stick it in.
Yeah, and you can like suck on your finger and get a semi-similar, like you get like, okay, it's an exterior, but it feels good, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, you get the idea. Now, your friend died.
Jesus. Wow, Katie. Fuck you. And I love you.
I just had to do it because
it's so true. We're so in this world, but it's okay. We had talked about for the abrupt framework, for those listening, we had talked about prior to the conversation today. Katie was like, is it okay if we talk about this? I said, yeah, but you have to abruptly drop it on me like a bag of shit and just like, boom. No,
like a bag of shit from a third-story building.
Yeah, like really just
onto
splatter.
Your head.
Yeah, that was abrupt, Katie.
I know,
but I'll take it. I'll take it.
You can handle it.
Yeah. Just a topic of conversation that is real. A friend died very suddenly over the weekend.
I mean, that's why
yes, a friend, but like I would say like a friend in community, like a person who matters very closely to some people that matter to me, and this person matters to me too, obviously. But what's been front of brain for me the whole time is thinking about this person's best friend and his partner and how close they were with this guy.
Yeah.
And how I'm just like, God, I can't even hold the
weight,
the container of what, and I know that's what I do is I I think I push it off to, what are they feeling instead of like really connecting to what I'm feeling. But that is a big part of it. Like the things that have triggered me in the last 48 hours is like, I'll pop on a Facebook and one of them will make a post about it. Ugh. And then I'm just...
Ugh. First of all, I'm so sorry. I really am. And secondly, I'm sorry to everybody involved, of course. And, it makes me think about, I don't know how to frame this, but I'll just say somehow in the last 5 years, I became, I have these waves that my healing business goes through. In other words, people will call me for like a similar issue for a while. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And then it'll kind of complete and there'll be another issue that shows up. And there was a good, I want to say like 2 years there where I was calling myself the death lady because people would call me and say, our friend is on the operating table. We have his permission. Will you open his records? Is he going to make it? Or that really happened. And then another one was, our friend is on life support. Do we pull the plug?
Wow.
And I've probably talked about that on here a little bit.
That's a huge burden to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the way I have come to, and there were about 5 or 6 of those in a period of time. And I was like, wow, this is a theme right now. In every case, I did happen to call it correctly, like what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then there was the one where they were like, what do we do? And I was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do about your friend's body and his consciousness, but I will tell you this. Here's how it will feel if he stays in a body. And here's how it will feel for him if he leaves his body.
Yeah.
And here's what he's telling me he wants to do. And then I did big caveats. And I was like, this is not legal advice. I am not a lawyer. Also, this is not my personal opinion. Also, if you listen to me, that's your personal choice. Also, I don't have an opinion about this. Also, I'm not taking on responsibility for the choice you make. And here's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
And that is some weighty stuff.
That's some weighty stuff. Yeah. That's why sometimes I know that people don't want to ask sometimes. They're like, we've had guests be like, you know what? I actually don't want to walk into that space because that's such a big question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But,
and how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'll tell you what's coming up is, and it's relevant to the podcast because it's directly from the podcast of like I've been sort of tasked with feeling my feelings and not thinking my feelings, but feeling my feelings. And so, been trying really hard to just be like, here I am. I mean, I'm feeling them. And, in the more just sort of moment to moment, I think I'm doing quite well with that. Feeling sad and then feeling fine and then feeling shocked and then feeling fine and, whatever. But when I sort of actively put myself in the mode of, then here's the little trap I'm falling into.
Wait, in the mode of what?
In the mode of feeling, actively engaging, sitting down, meditating, whatever it is, anything to kind of put myself. 2 things. One is I fear that what I'm doing is mentally get down in there, pushing my own consciousness, feel those sad feelings, which means I'm actually mentally creating the feeling. This is a whole bullshit conversation, of course, I'm having with myself, and me, I overthink everything. And the other part is that I've realized that my perception of feeling the feelings is around what we might call the negative end of the spectrum of feelings. So I can only recognize that I'm in my feelings if I'm actively feeling sad or actively feeling angry or actively feeling fearful.
Okay.
But if I'm happy, joy, all those other things, that's not feeling your feelings, which of course it fucking is. But
okay, so that's
does that make sense? Yeah, that's the judgment. The mind getting involved. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's saying it should be like this. You're feeling if you feel like this.
Right. I'm trying to be successful at feeling my feelings. So those are big air quotes I was throwing up.
I mean, something that the therapy people, I've suggested this this will come through a fair amount for me, and or therapy people say this, is sometimes the way to get out of that judgment, not that you're suffering greatly from it, I'm just saying for the people listening, is to just have a journal around and to just be jotting down whatever is like right now I feel neutral. And then every half hour, it's like, I remember the time we went to the baseball thing.
Right.
And then the next half hour, I'm sad now. And the next half hour, which then it's just like, you start to get distance on, and therefore understanding of how it all ebbs and flows, which can, when you have distance on anything, you don't judge it as much.
Yeah.
Because you're like, this happened and then this happened. And how can any of it be wrong or bad if it's happening?
Exactly. That's the part I'm mostly fine with, when I can get out of the "is this right" version. And of course, I've heard, endlessly repeated over the last 72 hours or so. It happened Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Saturday. Is like, there's no right way to grieve, and it's going to look different, and you can't expect how it's going to look at any point. And it might, there's all the framing around that. Like, I think that we have done a good job of like there's a lot of messaging around grief of like, you cannot be in judgment of of any way you're feeling.
Yeah. However you grieve.
Because grief is one of the most confusing pieces of emotional.
Right. However you grieve is how you're grieving.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
This makes me think of a somewhat tangential thing, but I think is important for people to hear, which is this idea of like, okay, I'm going to tell a quick story. So when I was doing the play, You Mean to Do Me Harm, with you at SF Playhouse.
I believe I know that play.
With you and other people. I don't know if maybe you'll remember this moment in rehearsal. I was having trouble with that one scene where there was a scene where I was like, my character kind of morphed into another person in another time, and I was smoking a cigarette and wearing a trench coat. Yeah. And I could not get
very noir,
but like a real shift from the reality of the rest of the piece. And the director, Bill English, kept kind of like trying to help me understand what the scene was, and I could not find it. I couldn't anchor into. I'd be like, he'd say, like, you're walking through the forest and you're looking at the trees. And as you do that, you say, and then I'd say the line and he'd be like, okay, let me put it another way. It's like you're in another dimension, but not in another dimension. And you say, and I'd say the line and he'd be like, okay, let me try again. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know what the scene was. The play itself, I felt I couldn't penetrate what it was trying to tell me to do or whatever. Until days and days we played with that scene. And finally, Bill said something like, he just was trying different tactics. Like, I don't know, what if I say this to her now? And he said, imagine that you're deep in your spiritual practice and you're connected spiritually. And from that space, you're telling this woman this thing. And I went, oh, and then I just nailed it according to what he wanted. And then he was like, that's the thing. And he said this brilliant thing to me. He said, oh, I see, Katie, spirituality grounds you. And that moment actually really helped me in my life because I didn't realize until that moment that was true. I had, up until that moment in my life, a really hard time with the word grounding. Like anytime someone would be like, it's not very grounded. It's like, where's it grounded in reality? You have to ground it. And I'd be like, I literally don't know what the fuck that means. I am not on the ground. Thank you very much. And so when he said that, it was not only it helped with the scene, but it helped me understand what grounding is. Because I felt that thing. I'm like, oh, spiritually connected. Oh, you expand and then you're peaceful and you're in your belly and you're here and you're present. Oh, okay. Oh, that's grounded. And then from there, I did a lot more stuff that helped me really understand that. A lot of third, first, and second chakra work, healing stuff, earth, meditating. But all of that is a very long-winded way of saying that I am someone, for example, who, and I really get that it's because my moon is in Pisces. Speaking astrologically, that's how I ground. I get into my feelings through the spirit. Pisces is a spiritual sign, and it's in my moon position, which is the position of emotional connection. How you process internally and emotionally is the moon. So because I have Pisces there, I have to process spiritually. It's how I process. And that's, you can imagine if you don't have like a spiritual parenting structure, that takes a while to figure out because nothing works and nothing works and nothing works to ground until, you're like in a Sufi healing school and you're like, oh, that's what, it was the only thing for me. So when I think about that and how profound that's been in my life, being such an outsider all the time, when people would say the simplest thing, like, just bring it down to earth. And I'd be like, don't have any idea what you're saying. When you think about grieving, if you think about the complexity of just somebody's astrology chart, 12 houses, all these different influences in each house, or think of somebody's human design, 10 centers or 8 or however many it is, all these gates and channels coming off all the centers, complex system. How could there possibly be one way to grieve?
Right.
There can't be.
Yeah.
How could there possibly be one way to anything?
No.
There can't be.
Yeah. And I think that there might be some guiding principles, which is like honoring what you are feeling. Like that might be the only thing you can do is just say like, and even that, what the fuck does that even mean? But like the only rule I would place on myself is like, step back from judgment.
Yeah. Well, that one.
Do whatever you can. I'm in judgment of judgment right now, but like remove, if anything, just let it go. Just let yourself, anything goes right now in grief at its core.
Yeah. And what I'm offering is that like, for me, like when people used to say to me, just feel your feelings, I'd be like, what? And then when I learned how to tap into spiritual alignment, that as soon as I'll give you an example, present day, when I open the records, pow, I'm connected to my feelings.
Yeah. And that that is what I feel is a missing piece for me still at this point. I haven't found it yet, or I've found some versions of it, but I'm seeking that aha of, and I've had it.
Wait, which you're seeking what?
The aha of like just, oh, that's what feeling my feelings is. That's what it is.
Oh.
Boom. And I have had moments of like, oh, there it is. And I'm there.
Except what about the fact that I see you feel your feelings like you'll suddenly tear up in this in here. So
that's
you know
good.
what that is.
I do.
Right?
I do.
So you know what your feelings are.
But reaching for them. I feel like sometimes, like with the practice of meditation, I feel like I'm trying to reach for them, to say, come here, feelings.
Uh-huh.
Let me feel ya.
Well, that right there is meditation 101, is they would say, stop doing that and you'll find them. In other words, it's like, what if you just be with where you are? Then they can arise. But when you try to find them, you push them away.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing I was starting with, is realizing that I had been doing that. I've been trying to generate that, because you're only feeling feelings when you're feeling sad or angry. So let me generate sad because I lost a friend. So I must be feeling sad. So get in that sad place.
Yeah, it's all comes back to that energy of trying or pushing
or proving. It's like I'm proving to myself.
Efforting, proving, trying, it all squashes everything that is available. But even that, I want to say for the listeners' sake, if you struggle with any of this, I can't always access what needs to come up until I get in my spiritual alignment. But that's because of my orientation.
Right.
You might be totally different, listener. You might not ever need to do a spiritual thing ever. And of course, what the word spiritual means is very flexible.
And maybe what I'm experiencing as like brain is actually, like, I don't fucking know.
That is actually what?
That is actually my pathway.
Doorway?
So what and that I'm doing it, but it doesn't look like what you've described to your experience. So then I'm like, well, then that's not it.
Right. I think, that really resonates for you. Like, it's like, what if you get to be a triple frickin' Gemini about it? And it's all very thinky. And then when you need to cry, Cass, like, you cry. I've seen you do it
true.
90 million times.
It's there.
I think you're quite good at it.
I'm an excellent crier. Excellent. That 3 is so happy to hear that. I'm an accomplished crier.
Good job.
We should bring Alison on.
Okay.
I know that's abrupt, but you know what? You did abrupt to me earlier. Hey-oh.
I don't care. I like abrupt.
I know.
Do it.
I like Alison. Here comes Alison Lynn. maybe going to be here in a sec. Is she here? Here she is.
Hi, I'm here.
Yes.
Wow.
Are you okay?
Where are you?
Oh, little baby Jerome.
Baby Jerome. I wanted to keep him with me to introduce him at the beginning, but we've had a day,
Have you? What happened?
Well, we had to drive. We had our first road trip. So we drove down to my parents' house from Philadelphia to Columbia, Maryland, which is in between Baltimore and DC. So it's like 2 hours.
And how was that?
It was good. There was only hysterical crying for like 7 minutes. And then I got off the highway and was like, okay, I guess you are hungry. So we stopped in. I nursed.
Okay. And how old is this child?
Like 7.5 weeks.
God, you made a person with your body parts.
That's so weird.
It's so weird.
But this is how every person comes into the world, is through another body.
That's even weirder. It's even weirder. It happens all day, every day, and I find it to be the most incredible, insane, miraculous, spiritual thing that there is. And we're all just like, yeah, I just made a person. I just popped another one out. No big deal. And I'm like, it's kind of a big deal, guys. It's kind of a big deal. So I was talking with Rami about you, Alison, because Rami was just there helping you, supporting the team. And we had this great talk about a concept that I wanted to sort of throw your way and hear your thoughts on. And then I'm going to ask you a bunch of other questions about you because you're our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Hi.
Thank you.
This is Alison Lynn, everybody. Just so you all know, this is our friend who has a baby latched to her currently and is breastfeeding baby Jerome. There, I've done my introduction. That's it. You guys are good.
And so, well, in brief, Alison, tell us what did you do for worky things before baby COVID, whatever?
Yeah, and still do. I kind of listened into part of our staff retreat today. I work in an organization and I do coaching and consulting, but our mission and our purpose is really co-creating power for love, dignity, and justice. So it's like transformational coaching, but also, working around deep equity, racial justice, mostly nonprofits, but also like foundations and philanthropy.
So you're like an evil, evil person.
Pretty much.
That's what you're saying.
In my heart, yeah.
Yeah, you're a bad woman. Okay, great. Desmond, really quickly, I don't know if you're still here. I love the baby noises. I'm wondering if the baby noises are going to be a problem for you later, editing-wise.
Not at all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
They're so good.
So to that point, and to all the points, when Rami and I were talking, Rami recently went out to visit you and was taking baby body onto their body for moments, for you to have moments to be a person and rest and all of that. And we got into the conversation about, when you're not in a typical nuclear family dynamic, that you end up needing to create community around child rearing in a way that, and then as a result of needing to do it sort of off the grid or in a different way or inventing it as you go, you develop these connections that you might not have developed otherwise. And like the gift of that, right?
Yeah. And
how I was relating to Rami about when I used to do 12-step stuff, I used to, I had difficult childhood. And so then I get sober when I'm 23, and AA is this fraternity where anywhere in the world, literally, you can go and have friends in 20 minutes. You go to an AA meeting, everybody identifies with the problem. Everybody has the same problem and the same solution. Everybody's reading the same book all over the world. And everybody, it's so hard to be someone who's sober in this world, particularly in the early stages, that people really bond together in that little club, right? So I have had couch surfing experiences all over the world with strangers who quickly felt like family to me. People who had my back that I met one time, who helped me for months in a row with life stuff I could never have done alone, all because I didn't have, a supportive nuclear family.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that, that could sound like a sad story, but I'm saying that I always just really saw wow, I would never have met these people in, Rock Ridge or Kentucky or wherever I'd wind up and like be sleeping on their couch if I hadn't. This came up last week, Cassidy, between you and me. We were talking about when you live a kind of iPhone, Mac store, beautiful curated existence, you're not out there like on the streets meeting people and like getting into it. Anyway, does that make sense to you, Alison, what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rami and I think talked about it, and I've talked about it with a lot of folks who've come and stayed. And I want to say too, it's like Rami they weren't just there like occasionally taking, it was like 24 hours every, on call, kind of just there and present for, helping feed us, taking him, quieting a fussy baby, just everything. And, I've been really, really lucky. I haven't been alone for more than like 24 hours and like 7.5 weeks. And what I've talked about though is it's given an opportunity for, us to just really expand our family, right? And for people to love Jerome, to get to know him, and to really take, an active part in his life, hopefully forever, or for as long as people want to,
Well, I think something that's interesting that I know about you, Alison, is that you did something that I think a lot of people wouldn't have done, and I love it so much, which is you took a very conscious, active, organizational role in creating that. You didn't just go, I hope my friends show up. You said, hey, y'all, this is that thing we talked about. We're community. I would love it if you could come and help, and here's how you can do it. And then you had other people take on the more organizational aspects of that. But still, like, it's so beautiful that you identified that need, kind of like what Katie said. It's like, well, I have to create it because it's the default isn't there. The default story is different. So you get to create it, but you took an active role in creating that.
Yeah. And that you have to be open to asking and inviting.
Yeah.
Right. And that sometimes that can feel really hard because, let's be honest, it's not that fun to like wake up at 3 a.m. and feed a baby a bottle.
Mm-mm.
Like, or, spend an hour like walking back and forth in a house with a carrier to try to get them to stop crying. Right. But it's like we can create these openings into these parts of our lives for other people to come into and be part of, and really be part of in the deeper way, Katie, like you were saying, right? Like have that connection, but also to deepen connection and invite in community. Yeah. So I have so much more to learn about that. But one book I read before giving birth that was really like resonant around practices was Mia Birdsong has this book, How We Show Up. And it's like thinking about like, how are we showing up for each other deeply in ways that matter, whether it's about around kids or, medical items or just like COVID, like how are we actually showing up?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like that's a question that sort of becomes inherent to the spiritual path. In other words, the more you work on yourself, from my personal experience, the more I worked on me, everything is about how you're showing up.
Yeah.
In other words, like there's nothing about healing that doesn't then apply to your relational dynamics with people. So everything that you heal inside yourself ends up having a relational implication in your life. So anyway, I guess I'm saying, I think it's kind of interesting, the idea of a book about how you show up, because to me, it's so inherent in the questions I'm asking about, like, of course you got to look at how you show up, but not, it's not, of course, it's not implied. People need books about it.
Right. Or practices. So I also practice Rinzai Zen Buddhism. And so that it's like, also a type that it's exactly about, how you show up, right? It's like, how are you walking? How do you ring a bell? How, like, is your, when you're asking for something, like if I'm asking someone for help, like, hey, can you take a walk with Jerome so I can sleep for another hour? Right? Like, what's actually the energy behind that? Right? Is it clean energy? Like, is it like,
right,
I'm willing to hear anything, or is there something else behind it? Right? So like every aspect, of how we show up. And
Yeah, 100%. That piece has been really big for me too, of like learning how to, there were lots of overt and covert forms of manipulation that had to get, blasted out of my nervous system for me to sort of come at people open-hearted, ready for them to say no, ready to get rejected, not attached to any outcome, certainly not having expectation that you should fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But also, I had a teacher who said a thing that really changed my life. He said, expect to get what you need, but don't assume that you should. In other words, it's like, for those of us who come from needing a lot of work on the self, you can't assume you're not going to get what you need, because then you'll never ask for help. But you can't expect that you should get what you need, because then you're an entitled asshole. And that's a fine line for people. And like, I often find people will try to black and white it and be like, well, I'll never ask for help because that would be entitled. And it's like, no, you need help. Ask for it. It's just, don't hold it internally and behind the ask with the energy of expectation.
Yeah. And I have to say, it gives me confidence when people say no and create those boundaries. It actually gives me more
faith in them.
Yes. To ask them again.
You trust them that they're telling you the truth.
Because I know they're going to draw the boundary that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's adulthood.
Yeah. I find myself quite often, if I want to ask for something, giving all the caveats, like making sure you can say no, and that I don't have any expectations, which in some ways lets them off the hook completely, so they don't actually get the chance to do to draw their own boundaries, because I've made sure all the boundaries are in place ahead of time.
Yeah, which is, another form of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. And we're all looking for control. It's just that those control energies tend to push people away more than they pull people in. And which is the irony about control. Like, when we're doing something that's from a need to control the outcome, it can have the effect of like, okay, all right. And people are just pulling away. But if we come in and we go like, hey, is there any chance you could give me a ride to the airport? And they go, no. You go, I got you. Thanks so much. Have a good one. And then everybody's free. Nobody's being pushed. Nobody's being coerced. There's nothing covert or overtly happening. It's just a question. But it's like, I think, I had a therapist too who said once that adulthood is defined as the willingness to be vulnerable. Maturity. The definition of maturity is the willingness to be vulnerable. And I kept that with me because for me, that resonates in terms of like, every time I am doing anything where I'm unwilling to be vulnerable, I try to not talk yet. Like, if I'm going to say to you, Alison, can I hold your baby? I'm not going to say it until I'm coming from like a readiness for you to say no. Because if I do that, just because how my system is, too soon, it has something behind it. It always has something behind it. So I just wait until I'm not trying to control. We all have our different forms of that. Anyway, how'd you get into that particular line of Buddhism, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it was actually, I wanted to do more in my working with groups around embodiment and physical embodiment, like what our bodies are telling us about what, all the messages. And so I got invited to go to a session. And so the teachers, Norma Wong and Rosie Abram, will often work with organizations and have developed also like a more secular side. And so I learned this like 10-step forward stance that takes you through different movements and breath, and then just started going to their different teachings. And then at some point, right, there's like an invitation that if you're interested in the deeper spiritual side and the practice, the more formal practice, right? Because it's all practice and it really is all spiritual, let's be honest too, right? But then there is some line of people who are committed to the path and doing more formal study with a teacher. And so I crossed over into that.
And what does that practice look like?
Well, it looks really different now that I have a baby. But the practice itself in our lineage has different parts. So there's Zazen, there's sitting meditation, There's okyo, so there's chanting. There's physical practice, which there can be tai chi or different martial practices. And then there's a fine art. And so your fine art could be calligraphy, painting, like flower arranging, ceramics. So the idea again that actually it's the same practice throughout, right? And it's the breath kind of throughout. It's where's your breath? How are you using that? And coming from your core.
And do they have suggestions about where they would like your breath to be?
Yeah, from your core.
And where's the core, according to them?
I would say similar to most other practices, like kind of below your belly button.
Okay, like right below it or a little further below?
Oh, no, just a little. I would say a little below. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because, across many traditions, there's a very specific point known as like the dantian in Tai Chi, right? And the unahapili to certain Hawaiian traditions, and the center of gravity, and it's down. It's like a specific amount of space below the belly button. It's about 4 fingers width down. And so I was curious if that's what you were referring to, that location.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. Okay, well, that's interesting. And so can you say a little bit about what doing that practice over time in those various forms? By the way, I love that the practice or the teaching or the lineage or whatever engages on so many different levels of the human experience.
Yeah.
Like what an honoring of the human form way to teach people how to be present.
Yeah. I think that wait, what was your question?
I didn't ask it yet because I got sidetracked and said a different thing.
Okay.
Would you agree that that's a very honoring way to have a practice? Like it includes the art and the martial and the sitting and the...
Absolutely.
Is that part of what drew you to it or not really?
I think it is because I really was drawn to, the being, like what does it mean to be in your body and be coming from a centered place, right? So if we are together practicing, there's a portion of a day, if you're in like an intensive practice, that you do chores, right? And in that one, sometimes there's people who will come around and they'll just suggest, hopefully in the cleanest way possible, right? And you can tell when it's not clean energy. They'll say, I see you're sweeping and you're using your arms a lot. What would it be like if you came from your core? And so like coming from your core, refinding your center again and again, it's like in every single thing that you're doing, whether that, is whether you're sweeping or chanting or doing Tai Chi. It's like, again, refinding your core and being present with that.
And you want to know where I learned that?
Yeah.
Because it's so different and yet so the same. Is voice lessons. As a singer actor, I learned how to do low belly reverse breathing, which is just how singers breathe. And when I learned low belly breathing, my life changed because I found what it was to be connected to myself all the way down in the low belly. And now low belly breathing is like the foundation of every meditation I do. Every time we open the records, we start with it because I'm so aware of how powerful of a tool it is to get people connected to themselves. And when you're connected to yourself, you can tap into the all that is. And if you're not, it's harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I just love like the different ways that we all stumble upon whatever teachings we stumble upon and then how they cross over in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question that I was asking before it was, how would you describe, if you do have this experience, that your life has changed or your experience of being alive is different, having been doing this practice for some time?
It feels like there is a different way that I can presence and bring myself both like to my work and my life. And then also an awareness of, oh, kind of like you were saying before, like you're going to pause before you say something because it's too soon or you're not like bringing that energy. So right, that deeper awareness of like what is happening within me. And so sometimes that might be like, oh, I'm doubting myself. And it might be to like come back into my breath and then walk through that gate of doubt, right? So it's like noticing, and this also, it kind of blends with the coaching I do, some of which is parts work. It blends with like, what is a part of me versus what is like my core essential self, and how can I make sure that my core essential self is the part that is acting, and I can, take input from other parts, but that it's me who's, we'll often say, like, is driving the bus.
Yeah, I've heard the bus metaphor a lot. I had a therapist who used to say, you want to give every kid on the bus a voice, but then you make the decision. And that was helpful at the time. Much more helpful to me years later has been the parts work I've been doing lately, which for me is about integrating pieces that got frozen into the nervous system such that, man, is there a softening and a deepening into the core. The core, I used to feel like, like 4 weeks ago, feel like there was still this, like, I would describe it like here, there was kind of like in the solar plexus, like a kind of a void, kind of a hole, kind of a space. And I was like, I know that's not supposed to be a space. It's supposed to be filled in with a sense of me. And I'm doing pretty well in life, but also like, let's fill that space in. And so, yeah, brought that to the parts work. Lo and behold, a part integrated. Now that space is filled with me.
Yeah.
And what a freaking gift.
And that it starts in the body. I mean, that's what I love about parts work, is that it often, it starts with our body, because our bodies, don't lie, right? Like they're there, whether, they're feeling what they feel, whether like we want it or not. And
to me, it starts, happens, and ends in the body.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the body. The mind has awarenesses that arise as we do the parts work in the body.
All right. For those of us who are a little more ignorant on this subject, can you give us a short version of what parts work is, Alison and Katie?
I would say parts work, it's based off of psychology and coaching, internal family systems, and this idea that, and interestingly, it's also seen in Buddhism. It's seen in many, many spiritual traditions. And so this is some of the courses and work I've done with one of my teachers, Sarah Jaweed, is about honoring and bringing forward the spiritual part that says, we are all whole, but we can be many, many, thousands of parts as well. And so an example of a part would be like this part that says, I always have to be in control, like a manager part. Is always trying to manage and be like, this is your task list. Do this, do this, do this, do this. If you don't do this, you're unworthy. And so the idea of parts work would be that we could get to know that part and understand what its motivation is, and then work with it and say, oh, maybe that strategy isn't the best strategy anymore. Maybe it served you at some point, but maybe now there can be integration, like Katie said, or maybe even transformation. Maybe that part is going to transform in a different way to serve you. Often the parts that are most powerful to work with are the parts that maybe are very deeply hidden or we're very ashamed of. And sometimes those parts can be protecting a part of us that at some point we exiled. And so how do we bring that part back into our fullness?
And to add to that, I'll say this may be a function of how I operate slightly differently. The way that what I do integrates with the parts work allows the parts work to be, every single time it is transformative and integrative, because, let's see. Okay. My parts work lady that I work with said to me recently, this is different than how I do parts work with everyone else. And I was like, oh, okay. How? And she's like, well, you organically have this thing you do. And then your thing starts while we're doing the parts work. And usually I would say, like, I would have you talk to them, or maybe there'd be words involved. For me, there's no words at all. Mm-hmm. It's finding the energy of a stuck, okay, I'll give a very specific example. I went in today, I had a parts work session on the phone, which was so great. And I said, all right, I have this really terrible response to turbulence in airplanes, and I've been working on it for a long time, and I can't seem to get over it. And I had a terrible flight out here to the East Coast, and I'm literally taking a train back because I will not get on an airplane again, And I'm like, so what's it going to take to like integrate whatever needs to be integrated so I'm not having that response to the frickin' turbulence? So we go into the place inside of me where like she'll say like, okay, imagine you're on the plane and now it's shaking. And then my body, the part of me that is terrified on the turbulent airplanes comes up immediately and starts to shake internally. And then as my body is shaking in terror, because I'm just thinking about being on the plane, that part that is shaking, if I stay with that part, the part of me that is terrified for whatever mental reason, whether it was the car accidents I was in or the sexual abuse or the whatever reason, dad looked at me weird when I was 7, that part is having a visceral experience that if we are present to that visceral experience, let's say it's a shaking in my case, the shaking shakes and then completes itself. And that part is then at the end of the shaking integrated into the whole. And then how do I know that that's the case is because it feels amazing. It feels peaceful and relaxed and kind of warm and whole. And there's no more whatever the icky thing was. There's no more anxiety. There's no more tightness. There's no more shaking. There's no more whatever. And so I find it endlessly fascinating that these parts are exiled, frozen, shut into certain crystallized forms. We talk a lot about things being crystallized in the brainstem, like emotions get trapped in the brainstem. And if you bring your parts work, meaning your attention to the brainstem, frozen energies, that those will shake and melt out. It's like amazing work and blowing my mind. And I've totally integrated it now into my divine light healing work that I do with people. Like whenever it's appropriate, like my guides will say, oh yeah, this is a parts work thing. Do the parts work now. And I go, cool.
Yeah. And it is for many people. And again, it's like what people will call spiritual or not, right? Like parts work is spiritual to me.
It is for me.
Right. And another powerful part of it is it can be intergenerational. And so there can be parts that, right, we've inherited. And so sometimes it's like those legacy parts. It's like, how do we pass them back? Like, how do we pass back and do that healing?
And how is in the session, you feel them, you allow them to exist. And just by paying attention to them and feeling them and allowing them to exist, they go, oh, okay, I'm allowed to express. I'm not exiled. And then they just bloom and merge into who you are, and they don't bug you anymore if they're bugging you.
Well, some people have to do more. So some people might visualize it like being passed back and then having a gift passed forward, like literally through generations or through culture. Uh-huh. So I think there's like there's a lot of different ways people might like quote unquote unburden, right? Like an exile who might be carrying some burden has been carrying a burden for a long time.
Right. And that speaks to what we were talking about before you came on today. We were talking about how each individual is so different and how we do any process is going to be unique to us. That was why I was sharing that, like, for me, it tends to be like this. Yeah. But who knows? Like, if it's different for all the hello person taking the baby. Alison's just giving her child away now to a stranger who just came in the room. So
who happens to be my father.
Oh, also your dad. I want to just appreciate how awesome that was to just have Jerome chilling on your leg through that entire conversation. That was so unexpectedly beautiful and just like so easy. Thanks. It seemed easy. I don't know if it was easy for you.
It's great. He's crying now.
Good. Take him away.
What do you mean by easy, Cass?
I don't know. I just was watching you be so present to our conversation and yet still so like engaged with this human that is part of you in a way that like I feel like I'm often see people like if like, okay, I got to deal with my baby, that means that's what I'm doing. Like having you were so utterly present to both of those pieces, it felt to me. Like I was like, how are you tracking this conversation so fully and coming up with these thoughts? This is my I don't have a baby problem.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is like, for this or otherwise, Rami was like, it'd be so great if you had Jerome for part of, the time. And so feeling like welcome, right? I feel like there's so many places in our society now where it's not welcome to like have a kid or have a baby who like might need attention or might start crying, especially in like business related areas or even just anywhere because you don't have control. It is actually something like you can't plan for and you don't have control and you can't control. And so some people who are caregiving want to have that, but then it's also like for other people's benefit, right? To like not inconvenience someone by saying like, oh, we're going to have to pause because I need to tend to this.
How would you explain your ability to be present with us while he was there? How does that work for you?
I think I'm so new as a parent that I'm not sure yet. And I mean, honestly, I've just been spending so much time with him that he still feels very just natural to like be on me kind of all the time and be part of whatever I'm doing. Right. Because I've been on parental leave. So I haven't really been apart from him for any period of time.
Mm-hmm. Can I articulate something I experienced watching you do it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you my filtered lens version of what I saw happen. Because I was aware of the same thing Cassidy just pointed out. And that's why I asked him, what do you mean by easy? Because I have my own experience of what I thought was making it easy. And I was curious what he was experiencing. I'm going to see if I can find words for this. It's like your inner reality is so inclusive and available to you. You are easy. And so what if you're talking with us and having a baby or making a tea and folding the sheets, like your inner reality feels very soft and easy to me. Fluid and inclusive would be the words I would use. That you're just, if your inner reality is that, you can juggle knives or you can cook a bacon and eggs. And what we're going to experience is the inner fluidity and the ease.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a very kinesthetic person. And so often like my best coaching, my best parts work happens. I almost always do it walking.
Mm-hmm.
So actually being able to be moving helps me pay more attention to the conversation.
Yeah, same here. I get that very deeply. What would you identify with on the Enneagram?
Oh, I identify as a 2, a self-preservation 2.
Alison is a super self-prezi too. And I have so much love. And that goes to like how you applied your 2 nature to self-pres to this whole baby structure. Like that's so perfect.
Right.
You're like, well, I need to take care of things. I need to make sure everything is lined up and covered so that I can be the most nurturing, beautiful, mothering person I possibly can be. But I can only do that if I preserve myself. So you set up this whole system. That's my external view of how it all activated.
Yeah.
Cool. What made you want to come on the podcast?
Oh man, I've been hearing, well, Katie, I've heard about your opening the records, like even way before the podcast, like way back when you first opened Rami's records. And I was really interested in it. And, then there was a long period of time where I was trying to conceive for a long time, like 3 years. And I knew I wasn't ready because kind of like, and Cassie had mentioned this, like when I do tarot cards or Ouija board or do other things, like, you don't ask a question you're not ready to get an answer or that you don't really want an answer for. And so I think I'd been interested, listened to quite a few of the episodes, was really excited by the records and by the podcast and just didn't feel ready to learn more. And so now I feel like I was in a space where I was like, okay, I think I feel open to and curious to learn.
And what would you like to learn?
Everything. No, I don't want to learn everything actually. I'm a little nervous. So one other thing that Rami might have mentioned or not is that I was also recently diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
Okay.
And so I just went to the doctor today for a consult on surgery. And so I may be getting surgery in the next like 3 weeks. And, and I have a baby now, baby Jerome, and I have work that I love and is very fulfilling. And, I guess I'm curious overall on like, is there anything I need to be changing to like fulfill my purpose? Or, then I have lots of specific questions I could ask too, like anything different I should do about parenting? What about anything I should know as I'm going into this treatment for thyroid cancer?
Okay.
So, there's specifics, but also general curiosity.
Okay. So you have a bunch of questions. That's great. How's your anxiety level around the outcome of all this?
Of what the records have to say, or the thyroid cancer?
The thyroid cancer.
I'd say I feel pretty low anxiety right now. Yeah, it has very good outcomes with surgery, like 99 to 100%. Like 5 year, it's just done. You don't even have to see an oncologist often. They just like take out the part and then keep watching it.
Speaking of parts.
Different kind of parts work.
Different kind of part.
Okay. Is that your phone?
Yeah, it is my phone because I wrote some questions. I'm like, what questions did I say?
Okay. So in a minute, I'm going to open your records, and then that's when those questions will be relevant, and we can ask them. I think what I want to ask you when it comes to health stuff, before we get in your records, Alison, is how much information do you want if I get information beyond what you're asking? Thank you for the boob shot.
How much information do I want past? I would like, let's see. I'm like trying to figure out how to bound this, like what my bound would be. No, I would say I'm like pretty interested in the outcome, but not super specific. Like if it was something like, oh yeah, this thyroid cancer might lead to this other cancer in 10 years. And that means in 15 years, you're going to be done in this plane of life. I don't want to know that.
All right. I'm going to just directly answer what you ask me then. Okay. Okay. What is your full legal name?
Alison Jean Lynn.
All right. Okay. I'm going to go into this mode now, which means you can feel free to relax. Alison, we're going to have our eyes closed when you're ready. And as we discussed moments ago, let's take a couple deep breaths into the low belly. Or in your language, let's find the center. And we'll anchor down into that Unahapili, Dantian, low belly place, connecting with the center, honoring and acknowledging what is there without trying to change or fix any of it. Be present, being present, being present. And consciously allowing the breath to fill that area and leave the body from that area up through the mouth. And then feeling into the bottoms of your feet as you continue to breathe into that low belly. We'll feel at the bottom center of each foot a little foot chakra spinning. We'll visualize that. We'll imagine it. We'll allow it to exist with no force and no effort, just a gentle allowing. And we'll see that little chakra at the bottom of each foot spinning, open and bigger. Each foot chakra expanding until the entire surface area of the bottom of each foot is an open plane of energy, like an open window. And as the foot chakras open and the bottom of each foot expands open, we're going to visualize those energetic roots extending, 500 energetic roots extending from your left foot and 500 energetic roots extending from your right foot, hundreds of miles into the earth. Really see this in your mind's eye, like a tree growing roots down into the ground. And we'll just consciously intend or allow that these roots extend down to the portion of the earth that your soul connects with most intimately, wherever that may be. Breathing into the low belly, allowing the heart to be soft. Next step, we'll just visualize a nice grounding cord or a tunnel or a tube extending from the base of your spine. A 1.5 feet wide grounding cord extending from the base of your spine to the center of the earth. Almost like a tail that grows from your spine. An open tunnel tail merging down and in to the center of the earth. And as that tail hits the center of the earth, it begins to receive divine light from the planet. Or you could just say earth energy. And this earth energy, this spiritual energy from the earth flows up through that grounding cord into your root chakra or the base of your spine. And it flows forward abundantly like a river into each hip socket, quad, glute, hamstring, knee, calf, shin, ankle, and foot, and floods down into the roots that we extended moments ago from the feet. And we allow ourselves to acknowledge this tripod grounding structure, our light body, light being, conscious awareness, tapped into the earth in 3 different places, feeding us, nourishing us from the bottom up. Okay, and so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth. Yeah, and just staying in touch with your center as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. Holy Spirit of God, protect me from all forms of self-centeredness, please, and direct my attention to the work at hand. Help me to know Alison Jean Lynn in the light of the Akashic Records. Help me to see Alison Jean Lynn through the eyes of the Lords of the Records. And enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of Alison Jean Lynn have for Alison Jean Lynn. Amen. And I'll just go quiet for a moment. Okay, and as I drop in here and you drop into your alignment with the Akashic Records, I'm just asking the Lords, Masters, and Teachers of the Records to clear anything that would stand in the way in my system and Alison's system of us receiving the highest and best healing energy, divine light, guidance, truth, spiritual teachings that Alison's body, being, soul, or spirit require today. So anything in the way of that, we're asking for that to be taken. I have to tell you, Alison, the first thing I just want to share, even just in doing some grounding work here, is your energy field is unlike any other energy field I've ever felt. And I guess that's inherent and implied in anybody's reading, right? Because everybody's different, but not really, or not to this degree. You have a very unique, well, I should say, different from what I'm used to, orientation to time and space. It's almost like if I say to your system, okay, we're going to ground, and we bring the grounding cord and we do the da-da-da, it goes like, I've already done that all the time. I am that. It's also like all around the edges of your physical body, the edges of your physical body merge very gently and organically with the air around your physical body. It's almost like you and the all that is are just really not all that separate. It's almost hard to find the edge of your body. You're just beingness in a really unique way from my lens and from my history with doing this work. So thank you for the opportunity to experience something very different. Have you ever had your human design chart done?
No.
Well, if it ever interested you, I can refer you to some folks who do it. It might be wildly eye-opening.
Oh, okay.
Because, yeah, I think you have I think you have some really interesting, specific things about you that system would give language to that perhaps no other system has yet. Not that you're like floundering and need it and dying or something, but just because, specific language that opens the doors to understanding is always fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So where would you like to begin?
I'm interested in if there's any messages about what would be beneficial to me in terms of preparing. Oh, hold on. I'm getting like a sense that this is not the right question. Okay. I want to ask a question about my kind of thyroid surgery, but my intuition is like, that's not the right question. Either it's like too early or I'm trying too hard. So I'm going to let that one go right now and ask the records what message they would have around me in terms of like being in my purpose.
Why do you ask this question?
Because I feel like it's hard for me to articulate. I don't have a good articulation with words of what my purpose is.
Do you have a feeling sense of it? Yes, and kind of like getting the like intuitive feeling of like trying too hard or too early. Yeah. What's trying too hard or too early? When you say yes, that's a trying too hard?
Like maybe I want words for it, and maybe either I'm not ready or I'm like forcing it.
Mm-hmm. What if the concept of purpose is a mental construct and the question is flawed because it's irrelevant?
I could get behind that.
Yeah, because for you, it's like when you're with the Dantian and the sense of self and you move from what's true, you're in your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Know the self, know the center, only do what's true, and you will experience the fulfillment that you think you will get by quote unquote knowing your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Know thyself, trust thyself, practice living as thyself every single moment deeper. Because your field is so refined and subtle, there's a way that you get pulled off your center by the smallest wind.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's thought, the way they looked at you, the tone of voice, the temperature in the room, what you took a sip of a moment ago, you know? And so, like is normal for most human beings, your tendency is to then go to your mind and say, what would make me feel more in alignment, correctly functioning, doing what I'm supposed to do? And to which we say, please come back into the belly, the low belly. Additionally, what is the, the 2 on the Enneagram, the self-preservation 2?
Mm-hmm.
What is the, maybe this isn't an Enneagram concept. Is this an Enneagram concept? Okay, yes. You know how there's I want to say the mental body, the emotional body, and the instinctual body?
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that idea?
Mm-hmm.
Which one are you?
It's the heart. The 2 is part of the heart body. The emotional.
So,
yeah.
Emotional. Okay. Give me just a moment with that. Something that would help with this question, or this yearning to understand mentally the purpose, is allow whatever emotional process is present in the moment to process through. So another way to say it would be like, feel your feelings, let them be complete. I'm sad, I cry, I'm done crying. And now what do I instinctually know needs occurring right now? What needs doing right now from my instinct in my body?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Everything else is irrelevant. Fully irrelevant. People on this planet and on this plane like to attach their purpose to some work or job they have. Well, my purpose is to be a bricklayer. My purpose is to be a something. That is not necessarily how it is to go for each individual, because each individual is made up so differently. So you would do well to give up that entire construct. How does that land?
Well, it's very relaxing.
Okay. Yay. What's next?
All right. Anything, well, kind of within the boundaries I set out, anything I should know about this thyroid cancer to consider?
With regard to which aspect of it? The surgery?
To consider, around surgery and recovery.
When you come out and you're laying in bed and you're recovering, do the practice of feeling into where it is uncomfortable, like the parts work, and be with it. Taking whatever medication you need to take, of course, take it. Do take it. And, be with where it is not quite right inside. Like, just like, somebody cuts into your body, it's going to feel a little weird after.
Mm-hmm.
Be with that. I see you. I acknowledge you. I value you. You say to it, to the pain, the discomfort, the whatever's there, and allow the tears to process the heaviness of the scar tissue, because they will. You have real facility with changing energies within yourself. You need only pay close attention and merge your visceral felt sense into the place that is uncomfortable. See, value, acknowledge that place. Let the emotions move through, and you will transmute anything that needs transmutation. This will be a helpful process for you after, just in terms of, making the whole thing smoother, making it all happen more quickly in a more integrated, peaceful, relaxed way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What else? Either about that or about anything else?
So I'm a queer solo parent right now, and I'm open to being partnered, to co-parenting, to living in community in different ways. And all I can say that I think I'm open to that, and open to even the possibility of, co-parenting with a partner and a romantic partner. It feels like there might be a little part of me that's closed off to that. So I'm curious about any input there and maybe how to be open.
What was the term you used? Because I didn't hear it.
Probably when I said that I'm a queer solo parent right now.
Aha. Okay. I thought you said an Aquarian solo, SOLOW, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what these are new words. Okay. Aquarian solo. Is that a different resonance of Aquarius? I must know. Okay. All right. Okay. And so, would you please, in this moment, find the part of you that is reticent to have a partnership in your body? And let me know when you've found it.
Okay.
And would you be open to saying to this part, what do you require in order to not be reticent?
Yeah. Okay.
And what are you aware of?
I got the message to let go. And this kind of horizontal energy.
Where is it?
It's kind of actually around my third eye. It's in my head.
Okay. If you could do me the favor of, just stay present to it, whatever the energy is. All this yawning is the moving. It's already moving. Integrating, releasing. Oh my goodness. Okay, and when you feel into that area again, that physical area in the body, how reticent is that part now?
It's definitely it's flowing, particularly on my left side. Like the right side kind of had enough flow. It like flowed it and it was done. The left side's still going a little bit.
Okay. Let's let it do that for a moment as we really be present to that flowing. Mm. 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 Would you like some words that I get about what this part was afraid of and therefore reticent because of? Or does that feel not helpful?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, being swallowed up. And something to do with the mom dynamic, your mom, when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I will not be swallowed up again. Not necessarily that your mom did that per se, but there's both of those energies are present. And it's just kind of like that thing of, I don't want to lose myself in some arrangement where I get these quote unquote caretaking benefits, but then I lose myself.
Mm.
Mm. Mm. Okay, and what's happening now in your body?
Well, it moves from like the left upper head and like spread down through the whole left side of my body. And then it was like this whole, just kind of like layers of my like the whole left side just kind of swooshing away.
And what's happening right now?
Oh, my left side feels way lighter, very, very present.
Very cool. And so we're calling in now, we, the record keepers, all the whatever needs to fill in that space and place that was cleared, that is in your highest good, is filling in now. The highest vibrations of Akashic blueprinting, your aspects of self, your wholeness, your spirit, etc. All of it. Oh my goodness, filling in those places and spaces. You know, you've heard the saying, it's the quiet ones. There's a thing there, like, say this for the people listening, that just because something is refined and subtle does not mean it is not powerful. In fact, it often means quite the opposite. Another concept that arises is you know, you can't break what is bendable. You can't break a river. You can't break a bendy tree. I mean, you can, but you know, you can't break a. Let's stay with river. But you can break a piece of glass or a vase. And there's something about your being, who you are, that teaches this to people just by you being in their presence. What else would you like to know?
One thing that came up for me is that I'm not sure if this is like, anyway, I'm just going to say it. One thing that came up was like thanking my ancestors and guides for helping me through birth. I definitely called on them the last couple pushes, and I felt them come. Like I went to a different place. I felt them there, and then I was able to keep going. So I wanted to offer that gratitude, and then also ask if there's any words of wisdom to pass along to me around parenting.
Okay. Gratitude is received. Very humbly and very quietly received. There's a lot of subtle, quiet, bendable strength in the bamboo shoot of your lineage. They literally show me the bamboo tree. I don't even know that much about bamboo, but it's like bending and swaying in the wind. And you can't break what is bendable, says your ancestry. Okay, and right, what was the question again?
Any wisdom they would want to share with me around parenting?
Okay, well, this one is a star being. You'll do well to leave much room for this one to explore and exist and taste different flavors of existence. This one is subtle and insightful, psychic and intuitive, otherworldly, not to be forced into, or we should say coerced into anything, but supported, followed. You like stand on the edges of the boxing ring as the coach with your hands up ready to catch. And that's it. You don't get in there and do the fighting. You don't hold up his back while he's fighting. You don't you're just there. You have the towel and the water. And if he comes to you, I'm thirsty, you give him the water. You are ever watchful on the outside edges, having his back, supporting him. And he may need some earlier than most star being guidance. Meaning, oh, I accidentally left a book about Arcturus in your bedroom. What? You're asking about the stars? Well, let's tell you about the Pleiadians, just 'cause. And teaching him about the stars themselves. Oh, this is this Big Dipper. This is the Orion. Everything about him is perfect the way it is. And he needs to know that a lot from you. If you nurture this one, in the masterful way you nurture yourself, no matter what the world throws at him, he'll have integrated and built into his unahapili the sense of his own okayness. That's your whole job. Love, nurture, support. Everything is good. You understand the difference between that and being boundaryless. We're not suggesting that. You understand? Okay. I'm just seeing the time. Yeah. Any last quickie?
No.
Any last longie?
No.
All right. All right. Let's close your records. I want to say it's been a pleasure to be in here with you. This is like a fully different experience of reality for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion, the lords of the records for their point of view, and the Holy Spirit of light for all knowledge and healing. I say you return all of Alison, Jean, Lynn's energy to herself. Please return all of Alison, Jean, Lynn's energy to herself. Please return her to her complete human wholeness. The divine portal and the Akashic records of Alison, Jean, Lynn are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the Akashic records of Alison, Jean, Lynn are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the Akashic records of Alison, Jean, Lynn are now closed. Amen, amen, amen. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. That was unlike anything I've ever experienced.
That may have been the quietest, gentlest last 45 minutes of our show I've ever experienced. It was just, everything was just so evenly paced, and like even the advice and stuff was like, here's a little dandelion puff to float your way.
I would pay money to learn what your human design is, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I'm interested. Rami mentioned it, and she was like, I think you might have talked to me about it, but now when they were saying something, and then I was thinking back about it, I was like, oh no, I don't think I know about that. Like, they thought I knew something about it, but I don't.
Who thought you knew something about
Rami
it?
thought I talked about human-centered design before, but I think it was a different philosophy that was much easier.
Oh yeah, this is way complicated. Please, please, please get a reading and then email us
Okay.
your basic stuff.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alison.
Yeah. I feel like I want to remember all the messages, but I feel like I also feel trusting that some integrated and that I can listen again.
Yeah, you can listen when it comes out.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, Alison. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye, Alison. So lovely.
Bye.
Yeah. There we go. Talked about stuff. I know. I feel so peaceful right now.
I'm so amazed by how different people are and how amazing it is to get to like feel people's specific energies. I honestly, that I've never felt anything like that before. She's got such a specific. I'm kind of getting that she may be what's called a reflector in human design. Maybe not, maybe a projector, but I would not be surprised if she were a reflector. And reflectors are 2% of the population, or some really tiny number, and they have all open centers. And they're fascinating. And she's also not very programmed. Like, she's not a reflector who has to like find their way back to themselves. She's like already there, which is so hard to be in this world.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't wait. I hope she fills us in. In the meantime, we're going to do our work.
Yeah. Do your work, everybody.
You asking for all of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you. Please email us with your questions so that we have questions to answer in the Akashic Records. Our email address is allanswerspod@gmail.com. That's allanswerspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to find us on Facebook or Twitter, it's @allanswerspod, @allanswerspod. Thank you.
Hold on. Podcast out. I won't see you guys for 3 weeks. If you guys don't want to miss a release date, I need one early next week. Well, and I don't know if you guys saw the proposal. I could easily clean up ET penises and put that back out. That's basically a new episode for most people.
How come?
Because we released it and immediately pulled it down.
Yeah, it was only up for like 5 days. And I have to cut like 45 seconds out of that podcast to make it releasable.
Can we call it the lost episode, though, when you release it? And please say ET Penis is the lost episode.
Absolutely.
That was a Sounds Awesome production.